Hello and welcome to the Unlock Your Life Purpose Summit. I am your host, Lorna Moon, and today we are blessed to be graced with the presence of Jim Cathcart. Jim is a world-renowned professional speaker and author. He's been doing that for the last 43 years, so he's just getting warmed up.
That's right.
He's written over 20 books and spoken at thousands upon thousands of different venues. He's a professional mentor to high achievers and a really awesome guy. So let's welcome Jim.
What a delightful introduction. Thank you for that, Lorna.
You're very welcome. So Jim, you're a man who's definitely been living your purpose for at least the last 43 years.
Yep.
And helping motivate and inspire others to do the same. So why don't you tell us how you came to find your purpose?
Well, I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. My dad was a telephone repairman. My mom was a housewife, took care of me and my little sister and my invalid grandfather, who had been disabled by a stroke and spent the last 7 years of his life in a hospital bed, unable to move or speak.
Oh, wow.
And he was in our front bedroom. And so I grew up in a suburban environment in Little Rock, and I expected a very ordinary, unremarkable life. I was a little bit above average student, but not an exceptional student. I was not an athlete. I was not encouraged by anybody to dream great dreams or aspire to wonderful things. And nobody in the family had a college degree, and nobody in the family had money. So, I expected I'll grow up, get my blue collar, work until retirement, retire, fish, die. I just get out of the way for the next generation to come in, let them do it. And so I had the basically hive mentality, be a bee and then get out of the way because there's other bees coming. And then one day after I got married in 1970, and we had a new little baby boy, and I was in 1972, I was working at the Urban Renewal Agency, the Little Rock Housing Authority, for $525 a month. And
Big bucks.
I had no college degree, 2 years of college, no money in the bank. I was 50 pounds overweight. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Had never exercised regularly, or never been fit anyway. And I'm sitting there expecting more of the same. I figured my life would be fun and nice, and I'd be a good person, and then I'd die, but I didn't expect to matter. And I heard a radio playing in the next room, and it was a show like yours. It was a little 5-minute broadcast, though, from Earl Nightingale. Wow. Earl Nightingale was, at the time, on 900 radio stations all over the world. And there was no internet, so the radio was the way we got information usually, television secondary, and newspapers primary, by the way. Newspapers were the number one source back then. And so Earl Nightingale's on the radio in the next room, and that day, what he said in 1972 changed the direction of my life ever after. He said, if you will spend 1 hour extra every day studying your chosen field, in 5 years or less, you'll be a national expert in that field.
Wow.
And I thought, let's do the math. An hour a day extra, let's say 5 days a week, take the weekends off. 50 weeks a year, have a vacation. That's 1,250 hours over one 5-year period. If I were to study only one subject for 1,250 hours, even I could become a leading authority on that subject. So what do I want to be an expert at? Well, it wasn't urban renewal. that just didn't seem to get my interest at all. I was an assistant to a man who didn't need one. So I was bored to tears. I had nothing to do all day long. He didn't need any help, and I was his helper. And so I thought about it for weeks, and then it hit me one day. I want to do what the guy on the radio is doing. I want to help people grow. Problem. I hadn't grown. How do you
Minor
expect
detail.
people to succeed if you haven't succeeded? You know, you can't lift people to a level you're not yet on. And so I started thinking, okay, I've got to get my own act together. What can I do? And I decided that day in 1972, let that sink in, 72. This was like before the invention of dirt, you know, a long, long time ago. I decided I wanted to be an expert in the field of human development. So I started fanatically studying personal development, psychology, self-improvement, things like that. I got all the classic books, Think and Grow Rich, The Power of Positive Thinking, you know, Success with a Positive Mental Attitude, all those, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. There weren't a lot of books at the time. And there was certainly not a section in a bookstore or a library that was dedicated to self-improvement or personal development. So I found those books. I read those. I read the Bible cover to cover at work for a 3-month period. I had that much spare time. But as I read all these things, I started changing my life. I started setting goals, first time ever. I started getting into physical shape. I ended up losing 52 pounds, stopped smoking altogether for life.
Wow.
Became fit for the first time ever. Got involved in the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs, which is like Lions and Rotary, but for young people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got fanatically involved. When I say fanatically, 200 meetings a year for 2 consecutive years.
Wow.
So after work, on weekends, for no pay, I was going to these meetings and getting involved in the community. And I went from committee member and worker to meeting leader to chairman of a project to officer in the chapter, president of the chapter, state chairman in charge of leadership training programs, driving all over the state on nights and weekends to teach other people how to set goals, communicate, lead, motivate, and things like that, all of which I had learned that morning from a handbook. So I
Wow.
didn't know anything from personal experience. I was getting the personal experience. But in 2 years, this is literal truth, in 2 years, I attended and presented at 400 meetings for
Wow.
0 income.
Wow.
That is known as fanatical behavior.
Yes.
Okay. But I figured I had a long gap to overcome. So I needed to overcompensate, not 1 hour a day, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, entire weekends devoted to studying the field of human development. So I'm reading all these books, I'm listening to recordings, I'm, you know, just overloading with any information I can get and getting around people who seem to be achievers because I like the way they think. And my circle of friends changed because the people I'd been hanging out with were like me. And they thought, you know, let's don't invite Jim. He's a bit intense. And so I had become so involved in this that they kind of lost interest in hanging with me. And that was fine. We were still friends, but I had a new circle of friends that were feeding my desire to learn and grow. And I kept getting new opportunities because the more I would achieve and the harder I would work and the more sincerely I'd follow through, the more other people would say, hey, can you come help us? And then one day a guy said, can you come speak to my business? Well, sure. He said, we'll buy you lunch. I thought that was a good deal. So, I did that and that caught on. And I ended up getting into the field of personal development and selling, a year or so later, selling Earl Nightingale's recordings business to business.
Wow.
Door sales, selling training materials when training materials weren't usually bought. And so I worked extremely hard over an extended period of time to learn my craft. And after 2 years of that, the U.S. Junior Chamber of Commerce in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the JC's headquarters, they said, we'd like you to come to Tulsa and become the national, what they call it, senior program manager in charge of leadership development.
Wow.
So I moved to Tulsa. Now I'm getting paid to do this.
Yay.
$1,000 a month, which was huge for
That was
me.
like
It was
double almost
doubling
than
my
what you were
income.
making.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was in charge of leadership training for 356,000 people. I had a field force of 5 volunteer state chairmen in every state. So I had 200 people, 50 states and 250 people actually. And these are my team, and they're volunteers like I was, but I'm the paid national guy. And so I'm writing training manuals, collaborating with people that really know what they're doing, and then flying around the country and giving speeches at big conventions to teach these other people the things that I had learned. And tens of thousands of them were buying these training materials and using them in their states. And then I had a chance after 2 years of that to go to work for an insurance agency in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as a sort of a in-house sales trainer, but I was more of a confidant and advisor for the general agent and then a coach for the agents. And I was the one who taught their company training programs. But I had my own business now as a professional speaker and trainer. And I flew around the country whenever I could book a speech, and I gave speeches. Well, fast forward, I did 3,300 of those paid speeches all around the world, went to all 50 states, joined the National Speakers Association, moved up through the chairs, became the president of it,
Wow.
designed a professional education program, which is called the 8 Professional Competencies, started writing books, became partners with a college professor in California, moved to California. And one day I was sitting in the office and the phone rang, and it was Earl Nightingale. I was terrified. My hero mentor, who I'd been listening to in these recordings and selling his materials, but had never met, he called me. And I said, yes. He said, hey, I just read an article of yours that was in the Nonprofit World Report, and I think it would make a good recorded program. I sell those. I said, oh, believe me, sir, I know. Because I had listened to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of Earl Nightingale on audio cassette.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention you sold his door to door.
I did. And I told him that. And he said, he laughed and he said, well, send me your program. And if we like it, I'll publish it. So my partner, Tony Alessandra, and I, he was the college professor, we recorded an album, which was the first recorded album ever. Let that sink in. First ever recorded album on the subject of personality types.
Ooh.
Now, I don't mean the first in our category. I mean the first publicly published audio album ever on the subject of personality types. Now, how many million people in the world today teach personality types?
Tons. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
And
to take that as a assessment, a big corporation.
None on audio at that time. So
Wow.
Tony and I published relationship strategies for dealing with the differences in people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a model that's very similar to the DISC model that's so popular and widely known today.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from William Marston.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gone back all the way to Carl Jung and before and developed our model. And later, when it came out, the DISC people called us and said, would you please do a DISC version for us? So we did that. But it became an international bestseller and sold $3.5 million worth in the first 2 years.
Wow.
So in 1972, I was this fat, out of shape smoker who was working as a government clerk, and I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio. In 1974, I was selling Earl Nightingale's audio programs. In 1984, he was selling mine.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow. Wow.
Who knew, right? I mean, how could I? No, I would never have dreamed that was possible, ever. And later I met him, and got to know him a little bit, and went on to record some other programs with his company. And Nick
Oh,
Conant, who's the son of Lloyd Conant, that was Earl's partner at the time, Nightingale Conant Corporation. Nick is a friend even to this day, but Nightingale was selling our album and sold it worldwide, and of course helped us move from obscurity to international prominence in no time. And so my life has been absolutely charmed and blessed, but there have been many, many, many times along the way where I've experienced severe heartbreak from betrayals and people that have exploited me. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in deals. I've been taken advantage of, and all that sort of thing. But that's been this big. The big, big, big part has been an absolute joyful choice of lifestyle to help other people live more abundantly. My purpose in life is that people would have life and have it more abundantly. In the Bible, that's John 10:10. I
mm-hmm.
want to help people succeed. And the best way I can do that is succeed myself and then teach other people how to do that and keep supporting and encouraging and learning from them so I can teach even more. And I went through a two-day intensive counseling session years ago with Tom Vacola. Tom's a life coach for executives. And Tom led me through this process and ended up producing for me a little statement that he laminated on a card called My Purpose.
Uh-huh.
And my purpose on that card says, I choose, let me get it exactly for you.
Yeah, I got to hear the exact thing.
Yeah, because I think I've got it right in here. Here it is. My purpose in life is fulfillment of life through me. See, my belief is that life exists in all of creation and it seeks outlets. It's expressed through people, through plants, through weather, through, life exists and it seeks outlets. Well, you and I are outlets.
Yes.
And the unique thing about us is we have the choice to be a good one or a poor one. So I can be a very ineffective outlet for life, and I'll live a small, unremarkable life, and I won't make a difference. And I'll probably be miserable in the process. Or I can live abundantly and become a portal for all kinds of good to come through me, even when I have no money and no power and no authority. I can pick up trash. I can smile at an unhappy person. I can hold a door open for someone who's struggling. There are lots and lots and lots of things I can do. So if I let life come through me more fully, then I'm happier. My life's more abundant. The world is better. Everything works. So that's my purpose, fulfillment of life through me. And then I stated through observation, appreciation, and full self-expression. Now, observation means I notice more than most people intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So I practice intelligent observation. Application. I practice what I preach. I don't just talk about these ideas. If I cannot use them and make them work, I don't talk about them. I change. I look for new ideas. Full self-expression. You can tell from the fact that I play guitar and sing professionally, that I, ride my motorcycle all over the world, that I give speeches and truly engage in life, that I do my best to express life in as many ways as I know how, with my family, my friends, strangers. And it says, I inspire myself and others to live more courageously, more intelligently, and more joyfully, so that we will have life and have it more abundantly. That's my purpose statement. Passion and purpose is what it's called.
Wow.
There you go. So when you told me what you were doing and what this summit was all about, I thought, If she only knew. Man, are we on the
I
same
mean,
page?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
You think about, that pivotal moment in 1972.
Yeah.
You could have taken what you listened to on the radio, or you could have been like, "Oh, I don't feel like listening to the radio tonight," right? Turn it off. Or you could have chose at that moment to say, "Well, this is very inspiring, but I'm a guy from Arkansas. I'm blue collar. I'm a B. I'm not that guy who goes and does these big things. I wasn't raised in the right family. I wasn't whatever." You could have taken any of those
Easily.
excuses, which I'm sure you could have
Easily. And
had,
people in my own family did that.
and you could still be maybe just retiring from your government job, you
Yeah.
know, with your little plaque to hang on your
Yeah. You know
wall.
what? The other day, someone said, when are you going to retire? You know, all your classmates have retired. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, you can come to my retirement party. They may call it a funeral, but it's a retirement party. Because I figure as long as I can think and speak and help and make a difference, I'm going to stay engaged.
Absolutely. I mean, so you took that, and this guy was your hero. You were selling his stuff,
Yeah.
and he went on to sell yours because of the decision that you made that I can take this, I can apply it, and I can do something with it.
Yeah. And I've become good friends with all of the heroes of my time. You know, Zig Ziglar was a very good
Mhm.
friend of mine. And last month, I was the keynote speaker at the Ziglar Learning Corporation annual certification program. I'm doing an ongoing training program for them right now. It's part of my startup again mentoring process, which is something I do, you know, in small groups, intense
Mhm.
coaching. Um, and Og Mandino, who wrote the book The Greatest Salesman in the World and many other books,
Mhm.
became a good friend of mine. And, you know, I just look at all these people that were big, powerful, amazing people at the time. And I ended up sitting in meetings with them, hanging out with them, you know, working on projects. That many of them hired me to speak at their conferences. You know, Brian Tracy, for example, when he was still a trainer in Canada, he said, Jim, I was in your audience the other day. I'm thinking about moving to America. Could I come to California and visit your place and have you advise me on what it's like to operate out of California? And I did.
Yeah.
And you know, Les Brown. I remember one day years ago, Les was on a shuttle bus at a speakers convention, and I was on the national board of directors. And Les said to me, he said, "You're Jim Cathcart." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm Les Brown, and I'm going to be a famous motivational speaker." I said, "Really? What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, this is my, you know, I just started, and I'm
Mhm.
on the way to my first paid speaking engagement." And now he's a, you know, world famous motivational speaker. Tony Robbins, you know, I've done the fire walk with Tony Robbins. When I
Uh-huh.
started full time as a speaker, he was 12 years old. And now he's mega rich and influential all over the world. You know, it's just, it blows my mind.
But it shows it doesn't matter where you start, and nobody was born as this influential person with everything lined up. They made, at some point, just like you, they made a choice
Yep,
not to play small.
that's right. And I found that there's one distinguishing factor
Okay.
in all successful people. One
Okay.
that separates them from everybody else on earth.
What is it?
Every successful person, and when I say successful, I don't mean they had a big win. I mean they are a winner and they
Mhm.
sustain that level over time. Every successful person, without exception, decided to become successful and committed to doing the work necessary,
Yes.
period. Everything else is committee work.
Mhm. That's
Everything else is negotiable.
that's so true. Commit and take the steps.
Right. And if it's harder than you thought, okay, it's harder than you thought. If it takes longer,
It takes
next,
longer.
right? I mean, so what? If it's more painful, more embarrassing at first, more, you know, awkward, if you have to have some pretty painful failures along the way. Okay, that's how people learn, right?
Yeah.
Who was it? John Ruskin, I think, was the philosopher that said people have come to fear failure far too much these days. It's the practice necessary to success.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
Powerful.
Oh,
Powerful
thank you for
stuff.
that reaction.
Powerful stuff. I love it. I love it. That's such a great, I mean, wow.
So
That's just,
I believe anybody can succeed,
mm-hmm.
but what success means is going to be different for every person.
Yes.
And success to me means, like I said in that little card, fulfillment, meaning that I'm uniquely designed to live in certain ways very well, and in other ways not nearly as well unless I find some resources or helpers or some kind of a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not built to be a long distance runner necessarily. I'm not gifted at um, mathematics, or I'm not a savant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what? I'm still a capable, conscious adult with most of my body functions working quite well. So I can do whatever I set my mind to do. And in some cases, well, let's say it's someone says, yeah, I want to be an engineer, but I'm no good at engineering. Well, why do you want to be an engineer? I mean, do you just want to be a football player, or do you actually want to crush the helmets and
Yeah.
play football? Because there's a big difference between putting on the uniform and going to the rallies,
Yeah.
sitting on the field and sweating and being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to be an engineer? Well, no, just dad told me being an engineer was what I should do.
Yeah.
Aha. So
Aha.
it may or may not be your gift. Start
Mm-hmm.
exploring it. And if it's not, become friends with some engineers or an engineering school or an engineering software or something, so you can do the engineering related things you need to do without having to be the person who's excellent at it.
Exactly.
And then find out what you are suited for and do a whole lot of that for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
That's where your joy comes from.
That's so true. Wow, that's such good advice. Such good advice.
Thank you.
And from a man who's made it happen, so we know it's good advice. It's not just lip service.
If you've done it, it ain't bragging. That's a quote
Exactly. If you done it.
sportscaster Dizzy Dean, baseball sportscaster. Yep.
And you have a way for the audience to stay connected with you and continue to get nuggets of your wisdom?
Yep. The easy way to find me is my last name, Cathcart, Cathcart.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look up Jim Cathcart on the web, you'll find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, on and on and on, Instagram, and all those. Facebook's where I live most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and LinkedIn. But I have on Cathcart.com,
Mm-hmm.
my website, I have an e-letter called the Acorn e-letter. And if you just send an email to that address, acorn@aweber.com, AWEBER.com,
Mm-hmm.
aweber.com, send an email to that. It'll automatically subscribe you to a once a week, 1 minute long message of inspiration with no advertising and no links involved that would lead you down some garden path. So it's just a service that I provide to keep me connected with people who are eager to grow. And I'd love to, have folks sign up for that.
Awesome. Well, we will put a button below to make that happen. Whether it's instructions or it leads directly to it, I'll figure out the tech behind it and make it easy for you.
Good.
Jim, thank you so much for your time today. You've been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure, Lorna.